Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. So the background is not that much different, just a smidgen. Still bear with me with the background. It is a little bit different. That's only because I'm sitting at a different angle to get better lighting because it's rainy outside and it's 5 o'clock, so the sun's starting to go down. It's getting a little rainy. I have a lamp over here, so that's why it's a little more orange on this side. So today's video is going to be a story time video about my experience in the psychiatric hospital. So first I'm just going to give you some background information on how I actually ended up going to the psychiatric hospital, and then I'm going to talk about my experience being in the hospital. When I was in 8th grade, if you saw my ex-boyfriend videos, you know that I had a very verbally and very mentally abusive ex-boyfriend. He never treated me right. He always called me names. He made me very self-conscious about myself and brought down my self-esteem, and eventually it got to the point where I honestly didn't think that my life was worth living. And I had a journal or a diary, I guess you could say, and in that diary I would write a lot about my feelings, and then I would write poems, and I would talk about killing myself and how I would kill myself. So I went to school one day, and then I came home, and I rode the bus at that time. So when I got off the bus, my mom was waiting at the bus stop, which was unusual of her because the bus stop was not that far from my house. It was literally like 3 houses down. So my mom was sitting at the bus stop in her car, which was very strange. And I got in her car and I just figured, I'm gonna go run some errands. I didn't really think much of it. And she started asking me questions about my notebook and things like that. And she had eventually told me that she was taking me to the hospital, and I hated it. I did not want to go. I had no idea why I was going. I was just thinking, I'm just a depressed little kid, it's fine. So I was not a happy camper at that time. And so we ended up driving to Children's Hospital, and I ended up being admitted into their psychiatric department, and I was there for a week. But I remember going into the hospital, and they were taking me back. They like checked my blood sugar, my blood pressure, and they were checking, you know, my vitals and things like that. So I remember sitting in the room, and they took away my clothes, they took away my phone, they took everything away from me, and that didn't make me happy, you know, as a little awkward kid or as a young teenager. You know, your phone is like an attachment of you, and so I was not happy that they took my phone. I wasn't happy that I couldn't talk to anybody, and I couldn't even tell like my friends, I couldn't tell my boyfriend like, hey, I'm gonna be gone for a while because I'm gonna be in the hospital because I'm nutso. So I had no way of talking to anyone or communicating with anybody except for my parents. When I got to the hospital after they took my vitals, they put me in a gown, and my cousin, who is a youth minister, actually came and visited me for a little bit. We talked for a while. It was a nice visit. It was fine. And it was getting late at night because I got off of school probably at like 2:45, or I got home probably around that time. So it was starting to get around dinner time by the time I was in the hospital waiting to be, I guess, officially admitted. And so they brought me dinner, which hospital food is not good. And then they brought me to another room where this woman was talking to me, and she was like, it's gonna be okay. What was funny was I had never, well, I guess it wasn't funny, but what was interesting was I had never actually tried to kill myself prior to being in the hospital, but I actually had three or four suicide attempts after getting out of the hospital. So it didn't help me at all, really. And I'm not discrediting them. I mean, obviously there are people who go into the mental institution and do get help, and they improve their lives greatly after being admitted, and that's great. But for me, it did absolutely nothing. If anything, it made the situation worse. They bring me to the psychiatric part of the hospital, and it's like this one entrance that you go through, and then there's a bunch of rooms. It's kind of like a square, honestly. Walk into the hallway, and there's like all of these rooms that kind of surround the place, and then there's an area that is like a play area, I guess you could say. It's like a community area. So there's like games, there was like a keyboard, I think there was like a hockey, not a hockey table, like a foosball table in there. And then there was another room that had, I don't think it had a TV, but it had like chairs and like a sitting area, and it had games and things like that in there. There was like a desk in the middle, and the desk was where like the nurses and people like that would be in. So I ended up going in there, and they assigned me my room, and my mom had to go home and get, you know, clothes and toiletries and things like that. And something that they did was, if your parents brought toiletries or brought you clothes, they would have to inspect everything before you could have them. So I had one stuffed animal, a pillow, and then I had clothes and things like that. But as far as my toiletries went, if I wanted to take a shower, if I wanted to brush my teeth, if I wanted to do anything like that, I would have to go to the desk and ask the lady for my toiletries. And I think I would have to sign and say like what time I got them, and then I would go back and take a shower, and then I would come back and I would have to give them back all of my stuff. And so it felt very invasive to me. I did not like it because as an introvert and as somebody at that time, and even now, I very much like my privacy. I like to be in my own little bubble. I don't like to have people interfere with my personal space. So I didn't like that at all. And at night they would have nurses, round the clock nurses, who would come in and check on you. I think it was like every 4 hours or something like that. They would literally come into your room and like be super loud and be like, "Are you in here?" It was my first night, and I remember my room had a window in my room, and obviously I couldn't open the window, but I could see right below my window was the helicopter landing for emergency helicopters. So every now and then, I think maybe once or twice over the span of the week that I was there, I could see and hear the helicopters, which I guess was kind of neat. So I remember the first night was not good. I was very upset, and before my mom left, and I just remember telling her, like, when I grow up, I hope I don't ever raise my daughter like you raised me, and I hope that I never become you, or something like that. It was just very mean. It was very uncalled for, and I know that was because I was angry at the time, but still it was very hurtful, and I know that it hurt her feelings, and she cried, and that was something that I regret a lot. And it was a moment that I would take back if I could, because I know that she was just doing what she thought was best. She didn't know how to deal with me, and she didn't know how to deal with the situation, so she put me in the hands of people who did. So the day came, and at this time I was still in school, but I couldn't go to school because I was in the hospital, and I was there 24 hours a day. And I remember that they have a school. They had a separate room within this, you know, one massive room that had a classroom, and they would have teachers or people who knew the subject that you were taking in school, and you would go and you would actually, your teachers from your home school that you were supposed to be attending but you're not because you're in the hospital, they would send work and send chapters to read and things like that to the hospital, and then you in the hospital would go to the hospital class, and there would be teachers there that would help you, and you would do your homework and things like that. It was very boring, and the good news was it didn't last very long, which was nice. It didn't last, you know, a full 7 hours a day, but you did get work done, so that was okay, I guess. I mean, it's still, you know, you don't get to socialize with your friends, and then all the people that were in there were having very similar problems. I remember there were kids in there who had drug problems, who had similar problems that I did, kids in there who were there voluntarily, and then kids like me who were sent there by their parents and admitted by their parents. I didn't start like school in the hospital until a couple days later, because the school had to like change things and send things over. I think there was this thing called like Blue Diamond or something, and they had to like send all that information over. I don't know, it was weird, but I just remember that I didn't technically have school for a couple of days, and then I did because they got all their stuff sent over. And I remember you would go and see a room of therapists and psychiatrists, and that was very intimidating because you would literally sit in a room and there would be like 6 people surrounding you, and they would be all asking you these questions like, well, why do you want to kill yourself? And like very invasive questions, very personal questions that, you know, you as a defensive teenager don't want to talk to them. You don't know who they are. They're not very friendly. They're not very nice. They're just very, I remember there was this one woman, I did not like her. She was not very nice to me. And I kind of thought like, you know, you're dealing with very sensitive kids right now. You should be a little nicer, but I did not like her. She was kind of mean. There were definitely other doctors and therapists and psychiatrists in the room with you, so it was very intimidating because it's like 1 on like 6 people. So I think I don't remember how often you would have that session with them. I don't know if it was once a day. I remember definitely seeing them at least twice, maybe 3 times, but I don't know if you actually had a set schedule for seeing them. They always had a set schedule for you. I can't remember the specific details of the schedule, but I do remember that you were able to talk to all the other people who were in the psychiatric hospital with you, and they had a set time for exercise, and you would exercise, and they would bring, you know, nurses or people in there who would give you an exercise time, and you would like walk around the facility for like half an hour. And then they had like free time where, you know, your parents would come and visit and you could talk to them, or you could go and they would like play games, and you could play foosball or do whatever. And then there was obviously communal eating time, so your parents, I don't remember if they could come eat with you or not. I know you couldn't leave to go eat, and I don't know if they could bring you food or not, but I remember that especially for dinner and for breakfast, you would they would give you a card, and you would fill out a card, and you would give that to the nurses, and they would go down to the food court and then bring you back the food that you filled out on your card. And then during breakfast they would give you, you know, your little cup with your pills in it, and you would take your medicine. And then I think twice, maybe 3 times throughout the week I was there, they would bring in service dogs, pet the dogs and things like that. So that was nice. I remember playing Monopoly with some of the kids there, and I remember there was this one boy there, I can't remember his name, he was like tall, blonde-headed kid, and I remember he invited me to his high school prom, and I was like, yeah, sure. And obviously I like never got into contact with him after I left, but 10 kids total that were there in the psychiatric hospital with me while I was there. Some were there for longer, some were there for shorter amount of time than I was. And they also had a telephone, and you could call your parents during a certain time or call people. Nothing really, I guess, bad ever happened to me while I was in the hospital. I remember if you were like a good patient, that you were able to go out for a very short period of time. I remember they took a couple of us to Adventure Landing, which of going to the mall or going to Adventure Landing, which one we can't, I think it was stupid to go to the mall because we couldn't buy anything, so there was no point in going to the mall. But then they're like, let's go to Adventure Landing, and I'm like, okay, it's really odd too. So scene in the first episode of Orange is the New Black where Piper, is that her name, gets into the security van or the jail van or whatever that escorts them to the prison. So we had a person driving that obviously wasn't a patient, it was a nurse, I think it was a man, and he was driving the van, and then the rest of us would file in the back of the van. And he drove us to Adventure Landing. We had another nurse who would be with us to watch us, obviously, so we didn't like jump out in front of cars and things like that. So they took us to Adventure Landing, and I guess they gave us like game tickets or something like that. I don't really remember. I just remember going there and thinking this is really stupid, because I think we spent maybe like an hour there, and then we just like drove back to the hospital and got to stay there for more time. And the whole experience, I wouldn't say was either enjoyable or bad. I did not necessarily have a bad experience there, but obviously I wouldn't categorize it as a fun experience, because obviously you're there because you're mentally ill. And I was so resentful of being there. I was so resentful of my mom and my grandmother for sending me there. I hated it, and I honestly at that point in time just wanted to fake it until I could get out of there. So I, you know, put on a smile, I laughed, I, you know, participated in what I had to participate in. I didn't openly resent being there, but obviously I did not want to be there, so I wanted to get out of there as quickly as possible, and I gave them, you know, the answers they wanted to hear from me. So I only spent about a week total in there, and they obviously suggested that I go to a therapist. They suggested I had seen 2 therapists prior to me going to the hospital, and then after coming out of the hospital I had seen the one that they had recommended to me, who ended up being a dream. He was an incredible therapist. He was so kind. Going to the hospital, I had seen 2 other therapists. One was a male, one was a woman, and I didn't like either of them. The guy that I saw, his room was so boring. He had nothing on the walls, no pictures, no colors. He had like one lamp on his desk, and that was like the only source of light. And then his walls were like gray. There was nothing on the walls, no pictures, no nothing like that. And he had like 2 chairs, and it was just, I just did not like him. He was kind of creepy too. He gave me a really creepy vibe. I did not like him. And then I saw a woman in the same office as the other guy, and I saw her and I didn't like her either. She was like the opposite, but like extremely opposite. So her walls were like bright yellow, she had all these colors, she had this comfy couch, and she had this nice rug, and she kind of had like a hippy dippy vibe, and that was fine and all, but I felt like she was there more to try to be my friend than she was to help me. I remember after one therapy session she was like, "I feel so bad for you, can I give you a hug?" And I was like, I don't know about that, because it was really weird. Like, your therapist shouldn't offer you a hug. That's very strange. So I didn't like her, because I was like, she's just trying to be my friend. She's not really helping me. She's like trying to give me hugs. Like, who is she? So I was like, no, I'm not feeling that. And then I ended up in the hospital, and then when I got out, I saw this other therapist who I absolutely fell in love with, and I spent a lot of time with him in the following weeks and months and years. I honestly saw him probably throughout all of high school. Bunny! Oh, I saw that bunny this morning! I get a picture of it. No, don't run away! I'm trying to get a picture of you! Don't run away! Oh, it ran away. Oh, that sucks. Okay, I saw that bunny this morning. Sorry, I have like ADD. I'm like so distracted. But I did see him for, I would say, 4 years after I got out of the hospital. What I loved about him was he didn't give you that everything will be okay speech. And I liked that, because you get so tired of hearing that. You get so tired of hearing everything's gonna be okay, you just gotta give it some time. And it's like you only have a certain amount of time when you're suicidal, you know? And if you are really truly in that place where you want to hurt yourself, or you are hurting yourself, or you want to kill yourself, time is not really something that you think you have. And that's not something that you should play around with, you know? Like, well, like, give it some time, but you don't know if they have that time. You don't know how serious they are about it. So saying it'll get better eventually is not something that people really want to hear, because that eventually can be next week, it could be next month, it could be 2 years from now. You never know. So the "it gets better" speech is just not something that someone suffering with mental illness really wants to hear, because it gets better is not acknowledging their mental illness, it's not acknowledging their problems. And a way to help people that's suffering with a mental illness is not to give them the "it gets better" speech. It's to acknowledge that they're feeling sad, and to acknowledge that they're feeling anxious, and to tell them that it's okay to feel that way, and that they understand that they are upset, and they understand that they're sad, and then to offer help. Because sometimes people just need a listening ear, people just need a shoulder to cry on, and if you're just going to sit there and lecture them about their life, it's not going to make them feel better, because what they want is for someone to acknowledge that it's okay for them to be sad because they have a reason to be sad, but to remember that you, are as a friend, are there for them and are there to support them and to be there for them. And the other end of that is it's sometimes hard for people who have a mental illness to reach out to others because we feel like we're being a burden and we feel like we're affecting your life in a negative way by being negative about ourselves and about our personal life. And that's very difficult for us to reach out to other people because I've been on both ends, receiving and giving end of being mentally ill myself, and then having friends who are mentally ill or who have had, you know, problems in their life. And sometimes it does get to that point where they reach out to you, and for your own mental sanity, you can't deal with that. You know what I mean? Like, you have your own problems and you have your own mental health, and, you know, them coming to you about their problems is either triggering or it's not helping your mental sanity. So you kind of have to step away from that and say, you know, I understand that you're going through a very tough time. I would love to be there for you, but for the sake of my mental health, right now is not the best time for me to talk to you about this. So, like, you can suggest to talk to other friend or a parent or somebody like that. And it does get tough when you have friends who have mental illnesses and you're, you know, trying to make them happy, and you can only do so much. And honestly, the best thing that you can do is to refer them to either a psychiatrist or a therapist or to a teacher or counselor or somebody, and just, you know, say, hey, I think you should go see the counselor. You can talk to the school counselor, you can talk to your parents, you can talk to a teacher, any adult that will help you. There are plenty of options for you guys out there if you are struggling with a mental illness. There are hotlines, there are suicide hotlines, there are crisis text lines that you can go to, and I will put those in the description below just so you guys will have them for your safety. And if you do know anybody that is suffering with depression or suffering with a mental illness or is suicidal, please refer them to this hotline. Or if you yourself are in a bad mental state, please take into consideration that there are other people's lives that are going to be affected if you kill yourself and if you end your life, because that's something that I never realized, or that's something that I didn't really think a whole lot about. Because when you're in that state, you think everyone's going to be better off without you, but you have to realize that that's not the case, and that your death is going to affect people very negatively. And it's unfortunate that sometimes you don't realize the love you have until it's too late, and you take for granted what you have, or they take for granted what they have, like your friendship or your existence, and they take that for granted, and then you're gone, and, you know, they regret not saying anything to you about how much they care about you or how much they love you, and that really sucks. But I want you guys to know that if you are suffering with depression or any mental illness, that I care about you and that I love you, and I think your life is so very precious. So I'm just going to close this video very briefly by saying, well, one, if you enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up. Also hit that subscribe button down below, and also hit the bell icon so you get notified of when I upload videos, because I don't have a set filming schedule yet. And as a final note, I would like for you guys to know that if you are dealing with depression or mental illness, or you know somebody who's dealing with depression and mental illness or anything of that matter, please let them know how much you care about them. And also remember that you are loved by so many people, and I love you, I care about you. I think your life is so incredibly precious. I think every life is worth living, and I think you should be alive to see the next day and see what tomorrow has in store for you, because you never know. Something could happen, something could come along, and your life could change for the better. And I know that it's hard. I know it's hard to see over that hill. I know it's hard to see the light at the end of the tunnel, but sometimes the light's around the corner. So I don't want to get too sappy on you guys, but I do want you to know that I've been there, and I know that it is a very, very long and very hard struggle in life to deal with something like that. And I am so incredibly proud of you if you're watching this video and you are suffering with a mental illness. I am very proud of you for living to see this video, and I hope you guys stay safe. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye!